Hey, this is Blaine Parrott, and welcome back to That Ain't Black Podcast with your man Blaine Parrott. I got a really special guest here. I always sit back and say that. And I admit she kind of put me on the spot. She said, "Oh, how you know about me?" And I admit I was watching TV. And I seen this fine ass sister, and I was like, "Damn, who the hell is she?" I got to go to church this Sunday, so I can't lie. So I went ahead and emailed her up and try to get on my show. She's a really good black African American woman, and she's doing really great things for the Seattle Times. She's a future feature producer.
Yep.
Only really young, 23 years old. Just
23.
jumped out from. Where'd you graduate from?
Washington State University.
All right, and you said you hit the ball running, got the job. The second or third day after
2
graduating?
days after graduating. I think I graduated on a Saturday and I started on a Monday.
Okay, now I don't want to mess up your name again because I'm kind of getting tongue tied just looking at you and everything and throwing me off. But what's your name, ma'am?
Vonnai,
Okay, your
Phair.
last name. Okay, and you are
features producer
okay.
at Seattle Times.
All
Is
right.
that what you want?
Yeah.
Okay.
I first seen you as the Blue Angels thing. We'll get back to that later on. 'Cause
Mhm.
You really won the lottery on that one. I mean, that
Yeah.
was really good to be in the Blue Angels. Thousands of people just in Seattle, let alone around the country, would love to take a ride on Blue Angels. We'll get to that at the end.
Mhm.
But when we get into you, so what made you want to get into journalism?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I started school at Washington State University, I had actually started majoring in chemistry. Had loved chemistry in high school and loved science, loved space. Thought I was gonna work for NASA one day. So I had this whole dream, this whole idea. Started taking some math and science classes my freshman year and realized that I was really bad at math and that
Yeah,
that
me
was
too, me
that
too. I'm
yeah,
terrible,
right?
terrible,
It wasn't gonna work out.
Uh-huh.
So I think it was over winter break of freshman year, and I was thinking to myself, okay, I'm not good at math, but what is something that I've always been good at, and that's writing. I've also just kind of grown up liking being in front of a camera, having done it a few times. I took some random acting classes growing up, so I was like, okay, how can I combine being in front of a camera or doing something really visual with writing? And I was like, boom, broadcast news is perfect for that. So that's kind of how I pivoted into actually majoring in broadcast news, but I've always been just a really natural writer. It's something that comes really easy to me, and it never has to feel like work. So that was kind of my inspiration for going into journalism. Now that I have been doing journalism for a little bit, I think it's really special to me, having grown up in the Seattle area and still being here, to have the opportunity to kind of go out and talk to people face to face, at least now since we're post-pandemic, face to face, and get out and tell the stories of the people and the communities that I grew up in is something that I hold really, really close to my heart.
Did you have any people of color that you looked up to when you were, you made the decision? Did you have any great writers? I had Leonard Pitts Jr. Always enjoyed his articles. He's a really incredible writer and everything.
Yeah.
Did you have that same?
I did a little bit. I had grown up watching Steve Poole on Como. I would watch the news every single day, every morning before going to school. Every time I would come home from school, and he was always on the news doing the weather. So I really looked up to him, and there have been a few other Black journalists that just across the country I've really looked up to, and kind of inspired me to get into the space. But I also, when I made the decision to go into journalism, I wasn't necessarily having an idol in my mind and thinking that that's what I want to do. I guess I was more selfishly just thinking, okay, what am I good at? Let's just go for it. Yeah.
Because I remember, I'm a lot more older than you. When they first put Steve on the news, that was
It was
really
huge,
It
right?
was huge. 'Cause I remember all the black folks in Seattle and across the country and everything. Because there's not a lot of us up here. We're only 7 to 8% black, and they really took a risk putting him on
Yeah,
as the first
absolutely.
black person. And they were really taking a big risk. And I remember it was on the lips and minds of everybody in Seattle, and it got on the national news. And that just shows you how far as a person of color and stuff that we come
Yeah.
now. We sit back and we got more of them and everything, and but we definitely need some more, because a lot of times when people sit back and they think of journalism, they automatically think of a white male.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, just some guy, you see on the news and you see in the TV and radio and all that kind of stuff and plays and stuff. He's a guy doing all that kind of stuff. He's
Yeah.
always white.
That's
And
definitely
sure,
the
yeah.
standard.
And you just sit every now and then you have a woman, but when it comes to blacks, in particular,
Mm-hmm.
it's down there nothing.
Yeah.
You know,
And
that's,
I relate to that
hmm
because I'm black, I am a woman, and I'm also a young black woman. So
uh-huh.
I feel like all three of these things are not things that you typically see
hmm
um, on the news or just in a position of a writer at a newspaper. It typically is an older white male. So
hmm
I'm kind of the opposite of all of the standards, I guess you would say.
Yeah, yeah, that's especially and everything because a lot of I wanted to get you on the show to sit back and try to find out, get your information out there, what you're
Hmm.
about and everything. Because a lot of young black females, they just think about hip hop and rap and dance and all that kind of stuff. But you can take those same kind of talents and all that stuff with the audio and production, all that kind of stuff, and
Hmm.
be doing what you're doing, and you don't have to get, focused or whatever shoved into that or categorized into that. And
Yeah.
that's what I wanted to get you on the show. So, I mean, was it any kind of intimidating? Like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this or not because of the stereotypes or anything like that, background, because they're going to be thinking, oh, they're looking for some white guy, especially in Seattle when we only have a very small minority population. Was it any intimidation
Yeah,
or
a little bit.
trepidation or,
I
yeah?
will say, I did study, I got a degree in broadcast
Uh huh.
news from school. I am not working in broadcast right now.
Uh
I'm
huh.
print, so I'm on the other side of the industry. And the main reason for that was typically in the broadcast industry, you graduate school and then you start work in a really small market,
Yeah.
like market 180 something, which is like Billings, Montana, or just a
Yeah.
really small city.
Uh huh.
I knew that I didn't want to do that. The main reason for that was because I've grown up in this area my whole life.
Mm
Seattle, I believe, is in the top 10 for broadcast markets. So it's
hmm.
like, it's at the top. It's like you get there when you're really well established in your career. It's
Mm.
not like you graduate from school and then you get to start in Seattle and be on
Yeah, I
TV.
didn't know that.
Yeah. So that was something that kind of made me think, oh shoot, like I am about to graduate and I want to go back home with my family and I want to do journalism in Seattle, but
Mm
I don't really have the opportunity to do that unless I put in 10 or 15 years, in different markets and cities around the country, which I will say is a positive thing to be able to like hone your skills and
hmm.
make mistakes in a way in a smaller market,
Mm
without the pressure of being in a city with like a million people.
hmm. Mm
But yeah, I knew that I didn't want to move around and I wanted to be in Seattle, which was my inspiration for applying for the job at the Seattle Times so that I could stay close to home. But it also was a little bit of intimidation thinking like, I want to stay at home, but I don't even know how to break into this industry.
Yeah.
Like I kind of mentioned, I didn't have like an idol that I was like really looking up to.
Oh.
So I did kind of feel a little lost and alone and just not sure what to do. So I did pivot away from broadcast. Broadcast is still like my great love.
Mm
Journalism in general, I think no matter what side of the industry you're on, it's all the same when it boils down to it.
hmm. Mm hmm.
But yeah, I did. I was intimidated kind of breaking into the industry, especially, journalism is extremely competitive,
Yeah.
especially
Yeah.
broadcast,
Uh huh.
where there are only so few on camera positions and they are typically filled by white
Yeah.
males.
Exactly.
It is something intimidating to kind of break into, and also thinking, well, if I break into it, I'm going to have to move to a small city and work there for 5 years and then, maybe move to a somewhat bigger city and work there for another few years and hope that one day I get
Mm
back to Seattle. So that kind of made me pivot away from broadcast for a little bit. But now that I have been working in Seattle for almost a year and a half now, I feel much more comfortable with the industry, even though it is still a thing that there are a lot of white males.
Yeah, because when we sit back and think about journalism and media and everything, being black and everything like that, you filter from how you view it from your life experience and everything. Like you
Hmm.
sit back and see something on TV, just like that one kid was running down the street with the AR-15, and you
Hmm.
look at that like ain't no damn way in the world. I was sitting up in the break room when the first story came on out, and the guy said, "Oh wow, he's a patriot. He's down there doing something." I'm like, and I'm thinking, ain't no damn way in the world no black man be running down Rainier Avenue with no AR-15. Are you crazy?
Yeah.
And you see certain things like the January 6th riot, everybody pretty much black in America woke up the next day saying that would have been us. It would have been a whole
It would have
different
been different.
thing. You
Yeah.
know, ain't no way in the world you're gonna be having an American flag knocking some cop upside his head saying you're a patriot, you're a patriot, you're a patriot. I don't give a damn how patriotic you've been shot and dead. What has been your experience, doing stories or whatever like that from coming from your experience as a black woman?
Yeah, that's a great question. I will preface and say that as a writer at the Seattle Times, I primarily cover events, so I don't
Yeah.
even really touch
Yeah.
a lot of that side of the newsroom and side of storytelling. But it is interesting. I think if I would have came into this position when I was still in my junior year of college in 2020, it would have been a lot different. But we are still dealing with things like this on a day-to-day basis, and it I think for probably every journalist could say it puts you in a really difficult position, especially black journalists or women journalists, kind of any minority that you find yourself in. As a journalist, you are supposed to remain objective.
Yeah.
You're
But it's hard. Yeah.
it's incredibly hard,
Yeah,
especially
yeah.
when a lot of the things happening right now are personal to me
Yeah.
and personal to the black community, personal to whatever community.
Mm-hmm.
You really do have to try to find a way to stand up for human rights and stand up for a lot of these things that you do believe in because you are personally impacted by them, while still balancing the fact that you work for an organization that is supposed to remain objective. So that I haven't had, I'll be very honest, I have not had to deal with that too much on a personal level within my professional journalism career, but it is on my mind. Even when things happen and, I have social media accounts. As a journalist, we are not, and this is not even just for Seattle Times. This is any journalist anywhere. You're not really supposed to engage in things on social media or repost things on social media that could make you seem like you are taking a stance on a certain side, because you are supposed to remain objective and present facts from every side of a story.
Yeah.
So it's hard, and I don't even think I have an answer of how to do it. It's just something that you have to consider. But I will say, at least for myself, it absolutely is a priority to still be standing up for what I believe is right, especially when there are things that impact my community and my family and myself.
Yeah, because after the events of 2020 was the George Floyd, it was media every day, all these riots and everything. And I remember, maybe less than a year ago, an Asian person, journalist or whatever like that, he put something up, and he got into a lot of trouble.
Are you talking about here in Seattle?
Yeah, I think he got into a lot of trouble. And I remember people were commenting. I remember the one comment said, "You got to kind of kiss on once you kiss their butts or whatever like that." And he put some stuff up there so syrupy sweet you have to blow your nose with a pancake. It's like, oh my God. But, yeah. It's like, as long as you sitting back, you don't want to offend somebody. But oh my God, I'm just telling you the truth and stuff. Just like I said with I forgot his name, that kid was running around the AR-15. I'm black. There's no way in the world. Everybody who's seen that event was like, there's no way in the world an African-American male is going to be running around any part of the country and the cops are going to be waving at you. Oh, my God. But let's go ahead and move on, because our history here when it comes to journalism with blacks in America and everything. They at one point didn't want us to learn how to read. It was actually against the law and everything. And when we did come out, we spoke our minds or whatever like that. Some of us were... some people were lynched, some people were persecuted, some people were put down, and we were trying to get it from our perspective and everything. It's just because we're the minority in the country is not well accepted. Do you have any kind of feeling that you have to carry on that kind of tradition to say something as a person of color?
Yes.
Carry on kind of tradition or whatever like that? Because, like I said, we get overwhelmed and we don't please somebody or something, say the right thing to the right person. Oh, we don't want to hear that, we don't like that. But because just like right now and stuff, you got the what's that fake news or whatever, Donald Trump or whatever. I want to get into politics, but fake news, and people don't like or whatever like that. They try to tone you down. What's your perspective on that?
I think, at least my personal experience, doing what I know how to do, I am confident in my abilities as a journalist and as a writer. I, in my short time at the Seattle Times so far, have kind of cast a wide net of sources and
Uh-huh.
people that enjoy reading me, and I really appreciate that. So I try to remember that when writing. Sometimes I will get negative feedback, and it makes me think like, why is this person saying this about me? Would they be saying it about someone who didn't look like me?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it does make me think, but at the end of the day, and I guess if I was going to give like a piece of advice to anyone out there,
Yeah.
if you know that you are a good writer, if you know that you have capabilities as a journalist, just trust that. That's all you can do. And I think really leaning into that and leaning into the fact that like you may be a gifted writer, reader, whatever it may be, and that is not something that society has always accepted for Black people. I think that's the one thing that you can do is embrace that and not shy away from it. I think that would be the worst thing to do to kind of and the worst thing to do, but understandable if you are in a situation where you're receiving feedback and you're kind of having to kind of retract a little bit.
Yeah.
It's sad, but sometimes that is the reality. But I would just say embracing and being confident in your abilities is the one thing that you can always do because that's so personal to yourself.
Okay, what about wisdom? Like I said, I'm a lot older than you. Back in the day, you submit a VHS tape to a company and wait till to hear it back. But nowadays, with social media, for God's sake, you can pick up a phone, laptop, whatever like that, and do your own thing. What kind of advice would you give anybody else who's African American who wants to do what you do or do something media wise, or if he has some political comment or some kind of commentary or something he wants to say, something socially, what kind of advice would you give them?
Yeah, I would say to do anything and everything that you can do. It doesn't matter if you are posting YouTube videos and you get like 3 views. It doesn't matter if you are running a blog and no one is necessarily reading it, as long as you are just putting your name out there and putting your work out there and actively building a portfolio of the things that you can do so that when you do come across a job opportunity, you can say, hey, look, I've been running this blog for a year. It doesn't matter, the engagement that it gets. It's the fact that you've been doing it, and that serves as an example of the type of work that you can do. I think that's the biggest piece of advice I have. If you are still in college and you have opportunities like clubs or a newspaper to write at, or just anything involved with journalism, or anything where you can get your name out there, your work out there in any sort of way, it is so incredibly important. I think that is probably one of the biggest things that will set anyone apart, no matter what your race is, your age, your gender, set you apart from other people, is if you can come into a job, applying for a job and say, I have this range of things that I've done and here's the proof, that's invaluable.
Wow, that's really good. What about blacks in journalism across the board? I mean, in America, when it comes to news and radio and stuff, do you see where it's coming up being more accepted? Or a lot of people, I remember like Ted, I forgot what his name was. He's on 60 Minutes and he's been there like 30 years and he just got away, and they got a couple of other people and they're really big now. I mean, are we becoming more accepted in mainstream media or what?
I think so. I think, and this isn't even specific to journalism, but I think kind of bringing this back to 2020, I think 2020 and the events that happened in that year, and George Floyd, all of that, and especially the Black Lives Matter movement, really served as a catalyst to a lot of the diversity and inclusion efforts that we're seeing in a lot of different job industries today, not just journalism, but even especially journalism. So I think that's kind of the silver lining of a lot of pain and hurt that has been experienced by a lot of communities recently, is that it has kind of been a wake-up call to a lot of organizations and businesses to look inward and think, okay, who are we hiring? Who are we, like, what are the faces that are representing our company? Are they diverse? Are they inclusive? Are we thinking about these things? So I think that's definitely become more apparent, and especially, like I said, I've only been at Seattle Times for just under a year and a half. And speaking just to my personal experience, I have been within a company, and even before Seattle Times, have experienced, just more of kind of an inclusive attitude towards any minority, especially the Black community, which is a great thing to see as we kind of move forward in time. It should be that way,
exactly,
right?
Yeah.
it should have been that way a long time ago, but I think we're finally starting, or at least I can speak for myself, I am starting to see that there are at least efforts being made. I definitely do think it depends on where you are. I think Seattle is, a different city than maybe somewhere in the South or something like that. But I think speaking generally across the board, across the country in whatever industry, I do think the needle is being moved towards that way where specifically the Black community is being highlighted more, being thought about more, all of those things, yeah.
Hey, what is your perception when Blacks still in the media and stuff, when they sit back and they report on events or whatever like that, but that with Blacks and stuff? Do you think that's getting better, worse, or whatever? Because it looks like when you do something wrong, it's wrong. When someone white does something, you must have had some kind of mental problem or something like that. They kind of fluff it up and like, what do you mean mental problem? The guy was a nutcase. I mean, what's going on here? This guy does something. He's a thug. He should be thrown in jail or whatever like that. Or what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, well, I think that represents the other side of things where even though there's progress being made in some ways, I think there's still a lot of work to be done in the way that certain things are reported about. I definitely agree with you. Sometimes things in the media can be, they give a certain person an excuse, but that same excuse isn't used for someone who looks different, however that may be, their race, their gender, their age, whatever it may be. But especially in the Black community, I don't think that a lot of the ways that certain people are portrayed are carried equally, and that is disheartening to see. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I would hope and think that is something that is actively being worked on. I think I can fully say that I think the audience and the people that are watching the media has become more engaged in recent years and more willing to call out things like that. But I don't know if that necessarily means that the people who are doing those types of reporting where you kind of see that inequity really clearly, I don't know if it necessarily translates to the type of reporting that they do.
I was asking some friends and stuff, and they, somebody Black does something, build more prisons. Somebody Mexican does something, build more walls. Somebody white does something, mental, mental nothing, man. The guy was wrong. Now, onto something a little bit more funny. What's up with this Blue Angel kind of thing? How did you? I'm kind of jealous. How did you get into that? You bribe somebody, somebody, you pull some strings or what?
Just as
you got
surprised.
Some dirt on somebody or what?
I'm just as surprised as you. It still feels like a dream. Basically, I had been in contact. So I write about events at Seattle Times. So I am constantly getting press releases from local event organizers. I had been in contact with the Phair event communications person for a while. I covered their Phair Summer 4th, which was like the 4th of July fireworks. So just been in contact with him for a while. And I saw an email come through one day and he was like, hey, if you want to nominate anyone, yourself or someone on your team to be the media writer for the Blue Angels, prior to Phair, just send me your name, just really basic information. That email came 3 days after I watched Top Gun. So I was like, I absolutely have to apply. I ended up just emailing back my name, my information, and kind of just forgetting about it, thinking there's probably going to be hundreds of people that apply. Didn't think too much about it, and then I heard back and they were like, oh, congratulations, you've been selected as the media writer. Turns out I was one of a few options, which was still incredibly fine with me just to be considered. So I ended up getting a physical and doing some things with my doctor to just clear me medically for the ride. And then the day before, I was actually in the alternate position for the ride. If the person ahead of me would have gone, I wouldn't have flown with the Blue Angels, but I actually would have flown that weekend on one of their other jets called Fat Albert. But the person ahead of me could not participate. So I was up I still don't know necessarily why exactly they chose me. I don't want to ask too many questions because I'm just thankful.
Who gives a damn?
Yeah,
I'm
right, right.
doing
I'm
it,
just
yeah.
thankful for the opportunity, and it was incredible. It still feels surreal. It still feels like a dream. Looking back at it, even though I wrote like an entire article about it and did a video, I still can't find the right words, I feel like, to describe what exactly it was like. Yeah, it was a blast. And I wanted to bring this up when you brought up
how
Blue
was
Angels.
it? Because I remember I watched Tough Gun when I was 16 when it came out, and being a jet pilot is badass. I remember I met one of the black guys back in the 80s, and he joked around and said there's two types of men, fighter pilots and those who wish they were. And I thought that was like really cool and everything. Then the same thing, I said, I'm going to be a fighter pilot, and find out you got to get a degree and be good at math. That crushed that. And they had thousands and thousands of people back in the 80s trying to. It was the biggest movie.
I bet.
Yeah. It was the big. It broke records. I remember it, and it got thousands of guys in the military to go into the Navy.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, because you see it, it's like badass. Because I grew up here all my life by the airport, and they come over your head, and it's like, damn. And walking down the street next to it goes over it in 3 seconds later.
Yeah.
And it shakes everything up, and it's like, how was it? I want to ask you this again because how it really was it like Top Gun the movie or what?
Yeah, it was. I will say I'll kind of go through the whole thing. I get to the airport. We took off from Boeing Field. The morning we spent kind of just going over like safety procedures and figuring out like what we would have to do if I had to be ejected from the plane or like all these other crazy things. So that kind of like got me nervous. And then there's actually a teacher who flew before me. So she did her flight, came back, and then it was my turn. I get in the plane. I'm like still feeling like, okay, I can do this. It's not that big of a deal. And then we get ready to take off, and I'm like, oh my God, this is like really happening. I would say it all felt like a pretty normal plane ride up until the part where we got over to our airspace over the Olympic Peninsula, and then we started doing all of like the maneuvers. Prior to that, it was like, oh, just a normal flight, like sightseeing out the window. And then we got to do some maneuvers, and that's where it was like, I have never experienced anything like it, and I probably never will again. We did rolls at first, which was really quick. Probably took like maybe 5 seconds for the jet to roll over twice. That was fine. The next thing we did was a split S, where we're flying, and in combat it's for you to like evade another plane. So you're flying and you invert the plane and then like do a half loop. That was really fun. That was like the first thing that we did where I experienced some of like the larger G forces.
That's what I was going to ask. Third thing, how was the G's?
Yeah,
how does it feel
G's.
Like?
So this one, when we did the split S, I think it was around 4 G's, which is not bad at all. It was kind of like I did the breathing exercises, but it wasn't quite super necessary. It just felt like a lot of pressure. I will say the next and final maneuver that we did, it was a 360-degree turn where the plane is like on its side. We hit 7 Gs.
Wow,
and
that's a lot.
Yeah, I believe the limit for an FA-18 is either 7.5 or 7.8. I think it might be 7.5.
Yeah.
So we hit 7. That, I think I had made the mistake. I braced everything, getting ready for, the pilot to say, ready, hit it, and then we would go into the maneuver, but I forgot about my neck. So as soon as we go into that turn, all of a sudden, 7 Gs, my 10-pound head weighs like 80 pounds. So it drops into my lap, and of course my neck isn't strong enough to lift it back up. So the whole time we're doing this maneuver, I'm just thinking about my head. I really honestly wasn't paying attention to the rest of my body. But I think that was kind of a blessing in disguise. Because I didn't really realize how much force was on my body. I just remember coming out of that, like my head popped back up. I was like, oh, I can hold my head up again. But I don't know. Even with 7 Gs, which I think, if you've never been in a jet or a situation like that, typically you would pass out at, or at least get sick. I came out of it fine, and I would do it again, like no questions asked.
Yeah, because I remember the interview with Tom Cruise. He said he was throwing up and all this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So he looks like you're a lot more tougher than Mr. Cruz in real
Right.
life and
Hey, I'll pat
everything.
myself
Yeah,
on the back.
exactly. The only
Yeah.
experience I had was jet. I went up Alaska and fishing and stuff. When you come
Mm-hmm.
to Dutch Harbor, the plane literally turns on its side and I was, oh my God, I'm screaming like a little bitch and like, oh, don't crash above me. The white folks got me, I'm dead. Oh God.
Yeah.
And that was my biggest experience. My second experience, we had to go out to the boat and we jumped off the airport and I seen this old plane from like 1930 or something.
Mm-hmm.
I said, that looked like a piece of junk. And they said Northern Victor. I always remember the boat is on this godforsaken boat, and they said, dun, 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 dun,
Oh
dun, dun,
God.
dun. We're going down, and the thing's dropping, and it's like, well, more the water talking about all the emergency exit off this side. I'm like, come on, man, it's freezing cold water. It's
Mm-hmm.
ridiculous. But you really won a lottery and stuff like that. It's a once in a lifetime experience that
Truly.
you had because you know, thousands, like I said, thousands other people out there, they love them and they long to be in a Blue Angel. Now, what's your future? Because you're young, you're only 23 years old, and you got it going on and stuff. I mean, what do you
Mm-hmm.
think you're gonna be within like 3 or 4 years or 5 years or whatever? You gonna think you're gonna be on a major news network or what?
Yeah, that is a great question. I do want to say one thing about the Blue Angels
Mm-hmm.
that really touched my heart. We had a photographer, a Seattle Times photographer, taking photos of the experience, and one of the photos that he captured that I received a few like reader emails about. There was a photo of these 3 little kids like watching at the gate, watching me either take
Yeah.
off or land.
Yeah.
And one of the little kids was a little black girl.
Yeah.
And seeing that photo and like coming back from that experience, all I could think was that I hope, and this maybe sounds
Yeah.
corny, but I hope that she did watch me and think that's something that I could do
Yeah.
one day.
Yeah.
So that was really, really special to have that moment captured by
Mhm.
the photographer, Corey. And to see that and hopefully have made an impact on someone who can think, you know, hey, I
Yeah.
look like that.
Exactly. That's why I had an interview with one of the Red Hawks.
Mm-hmm.
Because I want blacks to get into the industry because like with the Tuskegee Airmen and everything, we got a rich history,
Yeah.
and it's a huge industry. It's like $1 trillion industry,
Mm-hmm.
not billion, but $1 trillion industry, and you necessarily need pilots. And the fact is, there's a pilot shortage right now,
Right.
and it is a black female fighter pilot for I think the United States Air Force.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to get her on my show, but yeah, it's really good because you know you want to sit back up there, and I always say you can't be what you don't see. You know, like when I got into here, one of the guys I sit back, he's a Republican guy and stuff. It's kind of weird and stuff. He had his own broadcast and stuff. He used to come on 3 o'clock in the morning, and I looked at him. I said, "Wow, I have to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning." Armstrong Williams just to watch him on because he had his own thing. It was his thing. He was a brother.
Yeah.
I didn't necessarily agree with his politics, but he was a brother. He was doing it, and I got him on. He's one of my first guests on the show, and I was really proud of that because I seen somebody else that looked like me from my same kind of background,
Exactly.
and I said, if he can do it, I can do it.
Mm-hmm.
And he knows the same kind of struggle, the setbacks and challenges or whatever and whatnot that he had to come through to get to that position.
Yeah.
So I'm really proud of that. And I sit back and I tell somebody, I'm not, I'm not making any excuses or anything. I'm, being straight out the gun. When I sit back, I'm trying to get black folks in all different types of industry, regardless of whatever it is. I love to see black people doing stuff in different industries and growing. They had a couple of black guys that got their own liquor company. They everything. I mean,
Anything,
yeah.
right?
I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't know that they got like 8 or 9 people got their own beer company, tequila company,
Yeah.
wine. Different. Oh my God! I'm trying to get this one black lady. She's a fencing champion and stuff.
Oh, wow.
I had no idea. And they had this one black lady from around here. She climbed Mount Everest.
Mm-hmm.
It was really great, but you don't necessarily see those models, so you can't. Oh well, I can't really do that. And then there's one guy, I had a guest on. He said it's like I forgot weird kind of say. It's like your social media, social app. I forgot what he said. Make a long story short, who you surround yourself with or whatever like that is that you probably get more of a chance and opportunity or whatever like that if you surround you. That's why you know somebody's skiing, you're more likely to be somebody skiing. If you know somebody who's doing this kind of job or got this kind of whatever, you mostly the greater chance, 50% chance you end up doing it because you know somebody.
Exactly.
And a lot of blacks in our, especially in the city, don't have that kind of exposure.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when I sit back and I ask the lady, well, how'd you end up climbing? Because she knew a white female who was climbing herself. They said, why don't you come along with us?
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people in the city don't know a lot of people who's climbing or whatever, or surfing. I had a guy on, he was a surfer.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot of surfing
Yeah.
going on in the hood. But he knew somebody, so they say, hey man, let me go out, I'll teach you out surfing one day, and he learned himself. Now he teaches it,
Mm-hmm.
and he's being sponsored and everything. He's doing very well.
That's great. Yeah.
And I forgot that it's a subword. I have to look it up. But who you hanging around with and stuff.
Yeah.
And I found out that a lot of we don't get exposed to those kind of things because it's limited, especially in the inner city and everything. Coming from South Seattle myself,
Mm-hmm.
it's limited. You know, I went out hunting with a friend who at work and stuff. That's how I learned about it. I found out the National Black Hunting Association,
Yeah.
and there's a host of black people who are doing a ton of things. But like I said, my theme that when we looked at rapping, dancing, and basketball. And I said, that's the last thing I want to sit back and get on the damn show. Because we crushing that. We kick ass in that. We don't need to lay down no more groundwork. Where you dominating now. I want to sit back up here and try to expose black people to a whole host of things that, hey, I can do that too. So they sit back and look at the show. They can say, hey, man, he does it. I can do it too.
Yeah.
So they feel more comfortable. And, of course, get more confident in doing what they're doing. So again, what do you sit back and see yourself? You want to own your own media company, or just grow up and try to be like 60 Minutes, MSNBC, all these talk shows or whatever? I really like Robin Meade and stuff. She's really
she's great. I would say, in a very general term, I just want to level up at whatever I do. I want to move my way up. I always want to be making progress in some way. Maybe sometimes it's not going to be like moving from position to position, but I at least want to continue to grow as a journalist no matter what I do. So that's why I, especially as a young journalist, am trying to say yes to all, if not most things. I will say, when I kind of think ahead, I mentioned that I am the events writer. So I have kind of always gravitated toward lifestyle journalism, entertainment journalism, things like food and drink, arts, music, travel, outdoors, kind of that side of journalism I'm really, really passionate about. When I first got into journalism, like right when I started at Seattle Times, I was thinking, I want to be an editor one day, which is kind of like top in print. If I was to go back to broadcast one day, I think it would be just like dream job to host my own lifestyle television show. I'm not sure if you're familiar with, like, King 5 has like Evening Magazine and New Day Northwest. Como has Seattle Refined. So most broadcast programs and networks have their own like lifestyle television show, and I think it would just be a joy to be able to host one of those shows and go around and talk to community members and try a new restaurant and highlight like cool things that people are doing in the community. And I think being a Black woman, it gives me a really great perspective that I'm proud at, because I feel like when I think to myself, okay, what types of stories do I want to go out in the community and focus on? I do naturally think, what are minorities doing? What kinds of stories can I shine a light on that may otherwise not have a light shown on them?
Yeah, that's really good, because I know there's one lady named B. Smith. You ever heard of her?
Mm-mm.
I think unfortunately she died of cancer or whatever.
Oh.
She was doing the same thing with that Martha Stewart.
Yeah.
And
okay.
but she was Black, and this is the first thing that, like, hey, Martha Stewart, no problem, we'll get you on. When it came to her, like, we're not sure about that. And unfortunately, you could probably look her up, and forgive me if I got her name wrong, but she died like a cancer or whatever like that. But she had her own cooking show, pretty much like Martha Stewart's a lifestyle or whatever show. And that's what I'm trying to get Black people to do and see and everything. And like I said, I went to this one website, it was blackshop.com, and oh man, there's a whole lot of Black folks doing stuff in engineering, mechanics, and everything like that. They got this one black show. She got her own mechanic shop, and I'm trying to get her on the show.
Yeah.
And man, we're doing a whole lot, but like I said, we just get focused when it comes to the media and everything, dancing, rapping, and basketball. You know, I could do rapping myself, and I'm on my damn 50. They'll throw a microphone in my face real quick if I sit back and say something about engineering. Like, you know, they don't want to have anything to do with it. But yeah, that's really great, and thanks for being on my show again.
Thank
I
you
sit back
so
and see you,
much
and
for
I said,
having
"Oh
me.
nah, she ain't gonna get down with me, man." So let me go ahead and send a little funky little email, and I said, "All right, cool." Then you got it back, and I said, "Wait a minute, might be some dirt on me or something. She might be trying to bust me up
no,
on."
I only looked up the YouTube.
Okay.
I promise.
All right. And from here on out now, some stuff come across with me, you be cool, okay? Throw a brother a bone. Don't be like, yeah, he ain't about none. That mother, you know. Say, no.
No, we're cool now. We're cool now.
Okay, well, thanks a lot for being on That Ain't Black podcast. And
Thank you.
want you to say your name and your title one more time so I won't mess it up? 'Cause
Yes.
we had to flip the script here because usually you're the reporter. Now we got to, so you
Yeah.
get reported on, so I don't know how it is. But what's your name and your title?
I'm Vonnai Phair, and I'm the features producer at the Seattle Times.
All right, you keep on doing your thing, girl.
Thank
And
you.
remember me, and then well, don't remember if it's bad or whatever. Come on, man, because I got some dirt going on around Seattle, but I won't get into that. But thanks a lot one more time for being with
Thank
Blaine
you.
Parrott on That Ain't Black podcast.